Come on. Come on, no.
Well, the red Jeep's having to be taken home, but Matthew's already got plans on how to fix it, so I'm glad I have a handy hubby. It's home. Well, they have been great. Nadal has been awesome.
Hey, how are you guys?
He has been great. Got her home safe. We're good. Thank you.
Well, it happened again. We were out on the trail out of Three Lakes, and Randy got into drive, and it just turned over. Nothing happened. Well, should have been a sign. Got home, no issues. Drove it to work a couple times, no issues. Drove it out to eat, no issues. So the morning, at about 4 o'clock, going to work, and the tachometer drops way down. No sound, no response. Throttle's dead. Well, started back up. A couple miles down the road, throttle drops down again. Now it's got my attention. No warning lights are coming on, nothing. It's just like dead. Well, so I get closer to work. Well, the engine light comes on. It starts misfiring really bad. It's like just wanting to stall out. It won't run. The throttle, I'm feathering it, trying to keep it going. I got the clutch in and out, got my left foot braking, just trying to get it into work. So I get into work, I pull in, and it sits there. Well, it sat there for the day. After work, I took it over and put it on a code reader. I work as a mechanic, and got 4 codes, one of the codes twice. Code for the EGR valve, a code for a intermittent random misfire, and also a code for the crankshaft positioning sensor. Now the EGR valve is a fun change. Never changed to EGR valve. It's up underneath here, way up there. I took off the fender, I took off the tire, I took off the inner fender well to get to the part that's back there. I got to change that again. Here's the lesson I learned from that. I bought an EGR valve off of Amazon and got it for like 42 bucks. Everywhere else, for good ones, wanted about 100 bucks, $99. Well, this time I spent the 100, got a 20% off coupon, picked it up locally, and it has a warranty. But today, I have to crawl under here and change the crankshaft position sensor, which is a pretty easy change, and the EGR valve, which is not an easy change. On top of that, I also went and got some good spark plugs. Thanks for watching. Thanks for joining us. We're going to do a little maintenance on the red Jeep today. First things first, let's tackle the EGR valve and the crankshaft sensor because they're at the same place. To make things easier, I'm take off this fender and the inner well. Let's start with getting the tire off. Let's get the fender off. 10 millimeter right there, 10 millimeter here, here. There's one up in this hole. The crankshaft positioning sensor in here is 10 millimeter bolt. It's really easy to get to. I'm gonna go ahead and do that while I have everything off for me to do the EGR valve. So let's go ahead and start with that. So I'm taking, once I've loosened it up, I'm unthreading it by hand. This is a pretty easy thing to get to, even out on a trail, as long as your exhaust isn't hot. That's the bolt. It's 10 millimeter. That holds the crankshaft position sensor. This is the sensor. It just comes right out, just like that. If you haven't already removed your red clips, which are a pain to get off, the day before I do recommend that you spray them with WD-40 so that you can slide them backwards. If you don't spray them with WD-40, they're probably going to break apart. But once you got your clip backwards or gone, you push this tab right here on the back, just like that, and you pull. Now that comes right out. Again, that's this tab right here on the back. This little electronic device is called a crankshaft positioning sensor. Here's my new part. Hook it up. Clicks in. Push it back in the hole. There's only one way that it can bolt up, so the hole is aligned. Once everything's lined up, you get your little 10 millimeter bolt back. So, once it's lined up, that is the new part in place. A very common thing that goes bad. So pick one up, put it on, keep an extra one in your tools, because if your Jeep is dead on the trail and won't start, it could very well be that $20 part. That's the easy part. Now the EGR valve, which I'm gonna let you see the link below on changing out the EGR valve, because I don't need to record that a second time, with all the hints and tips on changing that. But that's my next tackle for the second time this year, to change out an EGR valve.
A good one when you buy it.
So if you're gonna buy one, again, as I said earlier, buy a good one. Don't buy a cheap one. They have given me a new gasket. That's the new gasket that goes between the tube that I disconnected on the top and the EGR valve line. A new gasket for where it hooks up to the block, and two new bolts. Last time the kit didn't come with new bolts, and it didn't come with this gasket. It did come with this one. Now the thing that's cool about this gasket is that you put the gasket on, the bolts hold the gasket. By the way, to give you a view of the clip, this is the clip that goes on top of the EGR valve. This is the little red tab right here. That red tab probably will slide backwards toward the firewall. So that red tab that you see on top of the EGR clip needs to slide toward the firewall. If it's touching on the inside, it's not going to come out. So the clip is on. The little metal bracket gasket is on. Now it's going to have to go up in here, and it's going to have to fit in just like that. You're going to have to thread it by hand. Once the lower one's got a little bit of a bite, then you can come up and work with the upper one. Remember again, thread these by hand. In the kit, plastic valve. This goes between the EGR valve and the EGR tube, whatever you want to call that thing that comes down. So this is a replacement part. Once you got it started, double check to make sure that that gasket isn't only on one bolt and hanging down. You want to make sure that both of them are, and then you want to bring these bolts snug with your little 1/4 inch drive. They don't have to be super tight. And now that's all tightened up in there, everything's tight. While I did the EGR valve and the crankshaft sensor, this gives me a great opportunity to change my spark plugs. And the passenger side spark plugs are a little harder to get to than the driver's side. So with the fender and everything off, they're right here. And that will be easy to get to. So I'm going to change my spark plugs while I'm under here. And if you haven't already, you can pick up a spark plug tool. It's not just the socket, but it gives you this flexibility. Let me tell you, that makes changing the plugs way easier. Drop it down on top of the spark plug. Again, I'm doing this with the fenders off because I'm that far. It goes down, and then I'm just going to put a wrench up there, and that'll allow me spark plug out. Time to change the spark plugs. Spark plug random misfire is a common code that can wreak havoc on your Jeep. It can throw you into like a limp mode because it starts misfiring. I'm going to go with some auto lights. Don't go cheap on spark plugs. Buy better spark plugs. Even though they're new from the factory, you want to check the gap. The gap on a 3.8 liter 2007 Wrangler for most is going to be at 50. To check that, you put it on this little disc right here, and you should be able to move it right up to the 50 mark. See, it's a little snug, so right there. And that means that that's what my gap is between the tip and the top of the arm. That's the distance the spark has to travel. This is a spark plug, but if somebody dropped it during shipping, they could crunch that down and mess it up. If it's crunched, you may have an issue. One of the things that's helpful is that if you have not ever changed the spark plugs, or maybe you feel that they're old, they are going to require probably a little penetrating oil where they sit inside the block just a little bit the night before and let it kind of soak in. The last thing you ever want to do is force a spark plug out of the block. If you are having to use a whole lot of force, you could break off the whole top, and trust me, having a broken spark plug inside your block is going to be a really, really bad day. I did this rear plug while I was working on the EGR valve just because it's easier to get to. Otherwise it can be a pain because of everything that's in there. Grab a hold of the boot, give it a spin, and then gently work it off. Coming in from the top, gently place it down on there. Once it's on there snug, I use a decent extension. Remember what I said about turning it lightly. You shouldn't have to force it. It should come off relatively easy. You just bring it out. You can see the bend that was in there. Imagine me trying to get in there with a wrench. So here's the old plug. It actually looks really good. It doesn't have oil on it. It's not orange. It doesn't have any weird residue. It doesn't look like it's burnt out. The plug in the back, not so much. Once you got it threaded, then you can put your wrench on there. And I'm spinning it by hand, as you can see how long those threads were. Once you get it down, then you can go ahead and use your wrench. Don't over tighten it, don't under tighten it. Slowly pull it carefully, get the boot off. Now this plug, on the other hand, looks like I'm getting oil. Look at the oil on there. That plug's probably not too old. I replaced all the plugs and wires probably 2 years ago. The passenger side spark plugs are going to be a little more tough to get to. Because the battery and everything is in the way over there, and the fuse box. But the driver's side is a piece of cake. Look at how easy and accessible this is. So over on this side, your plugs are right here, here, and here. You have straight and easy shot to them. So these should be a breeze. Watch your fingers down here. That exhaust manifold has a lot of sharp metal in it. Same thing. Dirty little oil. The gap looks a little smaller than it should be. This gap, same thing, under around 45. This front one's a little bit more tricky because it's right against the alternator, the dipstick, and then your AC valve is coming through there too, AC line. Last one. Here it comes. So what do you do next? You try it out. And let's hope that fixed things. So today we replaced the EGR valve, we replaced the crankshaft sensor, and I changed all 6 spark plugs. Well, thanks for joining us. I'm Matt. I'm no professional, but I hope that something that we do here on the how-to videos will just help make the job a little easier for you in the future if you decide to do it yourself. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment below, and we'll see you on the next video.